Hello there, guys. My name is Kylie Kimberlin. I will be discussing with you guys my synthesis project for EDLL 3352. First, we'll be discussing balanced literacy, which consists of three separate types of writing. The first one is interactive writing, which is also considered sharing the pen. So this is when the teacher models for the student what to do. And this can also be referred to as conventions throughout their learning. Next, we have shared writing, which is when the teacher and student work together. Lastly, we have independent writing, which is obviously when the student is on their own, but you can still go across the room and guide them when needed. Next, we'll be discussing writing workshop components, which consist of mini lessons, or also this is when you can incorporate a mentor text. So whenever you incorporate a mentor text, all you have to do is make sure that it goes hand in hand with whatever lesson you're introducing. So for example, if you were doing something like word choice, you could possibly pick, for sentence fluency, I would do Dr. Seuss. But Dr. Seuss is good for a lot of mini lessons that you may choose. Next, you have the introduction, which is pretty self-explanatory. You just want to make sure the student is understanding what it is that you're trying to get across and kind of understanding their background knowledge of whatever it is that you're teaching and guiding them throughout the whole lesson. So just giving them a good range to see like where they are and whatnot. Next, you give them writing time. This should be the biggest portion of the lesson. So like your mini lesson usually takes 5 to 10 minutes. Introduction, probably around the same amount. And then the writing time should take a huge chunk. So it should be like 30 to 40 minutes typically in a classroom. And this writing can be any of the writing that we discussed in the balanced literacy portion a minute ago. And so as long as, typically depending on where they're at, you want them to be independently writing. But after that, that's when we move on to the sharing time. And sharing time is super important in a classroom. You don't have to do it all the time, but it's really important for your students to know how important their writing is and how comfortable they should be sharing with their classmates. A very popular thing a lot of teachers do is called the author's chair. So you don't have to do that, but typically in a lot of elementary classrooms, I know I had one where you have a rocking chair, or they can even just stand up if they want, if they thought their story was super awesome, and they can share their story with the class or in small groups, whichever. We also experienced this in our EDLL course when we had our publishing party. Next, I will be discussing the writing process stages. So rehearsing and pre-writing go hand in hand, and obviously this is just more of like a background knowledge of what they're going to be performing or what you're looking for or that sort of thing. And just kind of talking about their ideas and brainstorming. That's kind of where this will take place. And then you have your drafting. So it's kind of similar to your ideas and whatnot, but you want them to actually have time to write whatever thoughts are going on in their head. Then next you have revising, which is adding detail to their work or trying to improve it in any way that it's needed. which revising and editing were always really confusing for myself. So just keep in mind that revising is always adding or making better. And editing is you really want to reinforce reading aloud or reading to a partner in this criteria or like aspect throughout their writing stages, because if they're reading it aloud or a friend is reading it and they're struggling, that will reinforce them that they have spelling errors or grammar they need to fix or anything additional like punctuation, that sort of thing. Next, we have sharing, which, just like I said a minute ago, the author's chair is always an amazing idea. Even if they don't like sharing, I would try and encourage it as much as possible, just because it's important for them to know and talk it out. And then publishing is when they get to actually publish it and see their book come alive, and whether you choose to have those sent home and laminated at the end of the year, or if they have a party once a year or twice a year, whatever. Publishing is super important, and it makes them think like, wow, I published a book. So that's super awesome. Next, last but not least, I will be discussing the 6 traits of writing. So we have ideas, organization, voice, word choice, sentence fluency, and conventions. So ideas, as we all know, is just giving them or having them give us a sense of what the direction is they want to go towards, or what in their mind is coming up. And you can do this in webs, brain clouds, whatever works for them in their style. But you just want them to be able to get out as many ideas as they can, so that then they can organize their ideas. So all of these 6 traits go hand in hand, just like everything else we've connected. And their ideas go with the organization in the way that, let's say you're having a conference with one of your students and one of their ideas could be better or go better in a different direction, and that's something you want them to realize, and you want them to organize their thoughts appropriately, so that when the time comes for them to write their story, they will be on the right track. So, and when their story is organized, it's really important for them to understand that it's easier for the other readers to follow along as well. And voice and word choice, these are 2 of my favorites. Voice is very important because you get to use things that really emphasize how the author or the narrator or the character feels. And just using really big words such as emphasized or that sort of thing, but that also goes with word choice. So I'd say voice is more of something like splash, that sort of thing, but they also go very hand in hand. And word choice is just something that you want, if they have boring words, you want their story to come alive when other people are reading it, including yourself when you're grading it. So there are several activities you could do for this. For instance, we did in our class the sticky notes, and you take a boring word from someone's writing and you change that word into an exciting word. And there are just several things you could do with this, but it's an amazing one. And then sentence fluency, like I said, Dr. Seuss, amazing. Mentor text to go with this, because you want the students to hear in the story how it flows very nicely, and you want to set them up for success in any way possible, but especially when it comes to these 6 traits. And lastly, we have conventions, which is pretty much anything and everything left. So that being said, like you want them to go through their punctuation and basically everything. This is just like an overview to go through everything they may have missed or what can be improved, basically like our revising and editing kind of portion of our writing process stages. But that being said, that completes my synthesis project. I hope you guys enjoyed listening and watching. I hope you all have a blessed evening. Thanks. Bye-bye.